You're listening to Until They Sleep, a podcast where two parents finally get to sit down and discuss all the different things that run through their heads every day because their four kids are finally asleep. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. I'm Chantel.
And I'm Daniel.
And this is our 30th episode, so thank you for joining us.
30, yay!
Yay! Don't you have like applause on there or something?
Okay, bear with me. It's been a while since I used this.
Okay.
And that did
That's not it.
And this one? Oh, you know why I didn't do it today?
Because you don't have the volume up?
Yeah, exactly.
There it is. It's kind of low.
Yeah. Continue. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. It's our 30th episode. Yay!
You love me. You really love me.
Technically, it's supposed to be our 31st episode, but we missed last week. I mean, we did record one, but I literally had no time to edit.
That wasn't probably that good either, so.
I know. Fine. Well, the subject was me going back to work.
Is that what it was?
It was, and that's why I didn't have time to edit, because I am back in the office, and once I'm home, I'm attending to the kids and dinner, and I do not have time to edit.
I was going to tell you, just quit, don't worry about it. But I think I'm going to get a demotion at work here pretty soon, so I don't think you can get it.
You'll be able to do it. You'll be able to do it. Work, yeah. Yeah, you had asked me, I guess we do a quick recap. You had asked me about how I felt about going back to work. And I told you that it was weird because I felt like the new kid because of all the new faces.
All right.
Yeah. And even though I've been there for 5 years, it felt like the new kid.
But you're like the older person now, right? Because it's nothing but young people now.
Basically,
all new faces.
Yeah, all new faces, seemingly younger than me. And I mean, there's like 3 people in the office that were there before. My boss, the payroll manager, and the accounts payable lady. And everyone else in the office is new. So it's okay. It's fine.
And on that note, I hope this is the right one.
What's that for? Work being all right?
Going back to work. And
Going back to work.
Yeah.
I know, I'm being the old lady. I'm still not the old lady. There's people older than me, but all the new faces are younger. So, yeah. It's okay. I mean, I've been busy. It's definitely different in the sense that I can concentrate on my work. You know what I mean? Even though today I was kind of pulled in a million different directions, which is what used to happen before. So, yeah. Anyways, That's me. Back to work, and it will be affecting my editing schedule. So, I'll
try to start editing too.
Yeah, if we miss any episodes in the future, I'm doing my best to not do that. It's just that one because it was the first week. Yeah. And then we ended up at birthday parties this weekend.
Yeah. We're driving. We going from Santa Clarita to San Diego to. So yeah, every weekend we're driving. Yeah. Which I kind of don't look forward to because I don't want to drive on the weekends.
This coming weekend is busy. We've got another birthday party for one of our kids. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we were also invited to a barbecue the day after that.
Oh, we were? Oh, well. I don't think I'm going to be making that.
Well, I'm going. So.
Have fun. Yeah.
No. But, yeah.
I need sanity.
Every weekend is something. And then August is going to be the same thing.
No.
Every weekend. For me, it is. No, it's For me, every weekend's going to be busy.
People can say no.
I can't say no because this is the only time of year that all the birthdays happen. And the rest of the year, there's nothing.
I didn't see a lot of people showing up for our birthday, so I can say no.
We didn't have any parties for our birthdays.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, my gosh. Well, on that note, though, again, there was a particular birthday party we went to this weekend. And you told me that there was a subject you wanted to discuss. Mm-hmm. Based on conversations we had there.
That was a good subject to bring up, which is a conversation that we've had before, especially every time when we have a kid. or every time we see people that are kind of like side of my family, our kids don't speak Spanish. I speak Spanish. My wife speaks Spanish. My mother-in-law speaks Spanish. My dad, like everybody in our family speaks Spanish pretty much. But our children do not. Have they been exposed to it? Yes. Do we speak to them in Spanish?
Sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean they get it. Usually it comes with them being in trouble from me. Yeah, so the conversation, it's not the first time it happens. It happens very often, where people always wonder why don't our kids know Spanish?
Especially on your side of the family, right? Because most of them don't speak English.
From my dad's side of the family, just about everybody does, but it's usually the women or my mom's side of the family. They don't. My sister doesn't. My sister from my mom's side doesn't. And that side of the family, they're not very fluent in English. They know the basic stuff.
They understand it.
Yeah, they understand it.
And our kids, our eldest, he understands Spanish, kind of, better than the others.
He understands it. I know he knows how to speak it. He's afraid because he has an accent. And he's afraid people are going to make fun of him for it. So
and I
can understand that
totally sympathize with that because I get made fun of by my family all the time. Like this weekend, it happened again.
So yeah, right. So, but in your case, it's different because, and I've said that before to the family, is like your Spanish is different because your Spanish is South American because you learned it from your mother, and your grandfather was the one that took the time to teach you Spanish to read and write it. So you learned that Peruvian Spanish where there's that weird accent. And the words have a different meaning or used different than what, we use over here. And I understand that being in a border town, the Spanish community is really big. Everybody speaks Spanish and everywhere you go in the stores and everything. But we're not that close to the border. We're farther. So then everybody over here doesn't really speak Spanish. And if they do, it's kind of like...
It's broken.
It's broken.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of Spanglish. Even myself, I mean, I barely speak Spanish, and that was my first language. And I noticed that whenever I speak Spanish for a while, I end up getting an accent or having a hard time speaking either language because I'm getting confused. Like my brain's working different. So yeah, that's the funny thing. So we were just trying to see if there's any benefits about it, if there's anything good about it. I know as a kid, they always say that kids are very smart and they're like sponges and they absorb everything. So it's always good to teach in Spanish. I remember a doctor saying, no, speak to them in Spanish. And
yeah,
English they'll learn in school. But then I was like, well, why can't it be the other way? I mean, if English to me is a dominant language, and my family gets offended with me when I say that, because it doesn't matter where in the world you go, everybody speaks English. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter, or
they understand it.
Yeah, and they understand it. But then I just look like a ignorant kind of racist according to them. Like, oh yeah, you forget who you are. You got the big old cactus in your forehead, like pinche nopal. And now you're all whitewashed. I was like, no, it's true. Like it's good to speak Spanish. And it help out people sometimes in need around here. But, I mean, English is spoken everywhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we're tourists and people always take care of the tourist or rip off the tourist or take advantage of the tourist.
Well, I remember growing up, every time we went down to Mexico, my dad... I spoke more Spanish than my brothers. And so my dad would tell us don't speak. Like if we went to a restaurant or we were out going to a store, he would tell us, don't speak because if they hear you speak English, they're going to charge us more. So he and my mom would take care of everything and we would have to be quiet. I was the only one allowed to speak because I knew some Spanish, but my brothers weren't allowed to speak. So that goes to say a lot about the expectation in another country to know their language. Yet my issue is like so many people are here and never learn the language.
Right.
And then they get mad or make fun of me when at least I'm trying.
Right. But then by you saying that now, then, people are like, oh, how racist of her, And that's
I'm an American.
But that's part of my argument too, It's like, It's like you can. So for example, like your Spanish is not perfect; it's broken, right?
It's broken, yeah.
And like I said, you also have the South American thing going on. So then there's moments when you're speaking to the family and you say something wrong and they laugh and they make fun of it and they and it's been you always say
my
that
whole life.
Your whole life is
my whole
that,
life,
right?
especially with my family in Mexico.
So then if you do it to them,
they get all butthurt about it.
Yeah, exactly. They're all butthurt and offended and how dare you make fun of me and mock me, insult me or whatever. I'm trying. I was like, oh wait, hold on, you just did it earlier. Oh no.
Yeah, you just made fun of me like 5 seconds ago. Like, what are you talking about?
So yeah,
I really do. I speak way more Spanish than they speak English.
So that's the thing that always makes me laugh about that. I did read that there are benefits for children learning more than one language or being dual. Like 40% of people are dual language or bilingual. I'm sorry, bilingual. And about like 50% speak three languages, and about like 1% speak more than 3.
Yeah, I love language. I mean, I took French in high school, and in high school I knew how to speak French, or I took it for 4 years, and I was top of my class.
I got kicked out of French class.
But so I spoke Spanish, French, and English.
I did.
And then in college, I took Japanese. That was super difficult, and I'm definitely nowhere near fluent in that. But I mean, I know numbers.
Yeah, that's all I remember in Tagalog too.
But it's kind of like I love language. Like I know people who speak like 7 languages, and they speak it fluently, and I'm a little jelly of those people because that's something I always wish I was able to do. I don't know if I just didn't take the time to learn it, or my brain just doesn't absorb it that well. But I do hear that, I've heard the same studies where it says it's super important for children to be exposed to multiple languages at a young age. But we've run into the issue with our kids where they were exposed to Spanish at a young age, and then they were marked as English learners once they started school. And I was like, no, like, I don't understand why they're being marked as an English learner if they don't even speak Spanish. They were just exposed to Spanish, but the school system marked them as an English learner. Oh, and the school also made it seem, because our kids don't like I think we've talked about this before, where my kids don't like to read, and I do, and they do struggle with phonetics. And the teachers have gone so far as to tell me that it's because of Spanish. And I'm like, I'm telling you guys, they hear Spanish, but they do not speak Spanish. Like we as adults speak Spanish to each other because we don't want them to understand what we're saying.
Right.
But we're not forcing them to learn Spanish. So I don't understand how that's messing them up if allegedly knowing another language is supposed to be beneficial.
I think it's just kind of like one of those things where the school just kind of wants to find an excuse of why they're having a hard time in class.
I mean, it could be they're just dyslexic for...
Right. So instead of just going that route and like, well, you know what, they're Hispanic, so let's just say that, English is their second language and they're having a hard time. Even
though it's not.
Yeah,
so it's super frustrating.
With our kids, our oldest one has been around it. He was born in San Diego, and he lived around there, and he met kids that spoke Spanish, and
his cousins.
He was around, cousins that spoke Spanish, but he barely tried. Like, he was like, whatever.
We have American Sign Language too.
Yeah, and then our second boy, he actually was around Spanish for the
3 years.
Yeah, the first year. One of my aunts used to take care of him, and she only spoke Spanish, and so. That was, since he was, a newborn till 3. Yeah, where he just spoke Spanish. Like, he heard Spanish.
On a daily.
And, I mean, he heard English, too, because of a brother and you and me. But my aunt spoke to him in Spanish. I kind of spoke to him in Spanish.
But he was with her more than he was with us.
Yeah, I've talked to all the kids in Spanish. Our daughter, who's now 7, she's the one I think that's the most Mexican out of all of my kids. You know, she likes all the food and all the candy and everything that I introduced to her. That's, you know, from the Mexican culture. She really likes and enjoy. And her brothers pick on her and they mispronounce tamales. They say tamales, and she has a fit, and she loves eating beans and rice, and like she loves tacos.
But she has the hardest time enunciating anything in Spanish. Yeah. But she tries.
And she wants to learn, and she's always curious. But she doesn't speak
a single thing. Just she thinks Spanish is Japanese. She calls it. Are we speaking Japanese? I'm like, no, it's Spanish. It's not Japanese, but that's because my stepfather's Japanese, so he would be watching his TV in Japanese, and the girls would walk in there, and he would put Japanese programs on for them, so they were exposed to Japanese by the TV with him, and then Spanish with us. But for her, speaking Spanish is Japanese, so we're working on her understanding that it's not the same language.
So that was that one. And the baby, well, I was like, there were moments where I felt bad that the other three didn't speak Spanish, because there's been moments, like you said, we've been to south of the border. Well, we used to go. It's been a long time, but before, where, you know, like I kind of like the same thing. Like don't speak. Like, let me take care of it, because of that. Yeah, because people automatically start judging, or, you know, they give you that advantage. Yeah. So they make you feel bad when you're there because you're speaking English. It's like, pichu pocho, or like, you know, oh, pichu nopal, or whatever. And it's funny because if we do that here, then we're racist, but they're being racist also.
Yeah, and it's okay for them to do that.
Yeah, it's okay for them to do it, right? So that's the funny part in that one. But with the baby, I've spoken to her more in Spanish, and she comes to me, you know, usually every day, and she wants to learn a new word, and she's trying. For me, I don't think I really dove the Spanish on them, because I didn't want to confuse them, and I didn't want that to happen at schools, but it still did.
Yeah.
Because I remember the transition for me of being put on ESL. When I was in school, like, oh, you know what?
That's what they did to our eldest. They put him in ESL, and he didn't even speak any Spanish.
Yeah, because I remember, and that was the main thing, I think, with the other two, that I was like, I don't want to talk to them in Spanish, because I don't want them to go through the difficulties that he went through.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks, right? But, I mean, yeah, I also think languages are beautiful. I enjoyed it. I mean, there's so many, I always wanted to learn more languages. Like I said, I took Tagalog, and I kind of fell miserable. I only took it for 1 year. I took French class, but the teacher really hated me, so she kicked me out. And then I think those are the beginnings of my America mentality, because I was like, what? And I was like, it's America, speaking English.
Yeah.
And that was enough for her to kick me out.
Well, like, we got Duolingo, right, for the kids. And the whole point of getting the Duolingo was so that they would practice Spanish. But
they've all taken different languages.
They're taking different languages.
We got one taking German.
Our 10-year-old, he does take Spanish, but it doesn't stick. And it's amazing to me that even though he was exposed to it for 3 years on a daily basis, TV and conversation, none of it stuck.
You know, the one thing I noticed about, I don't know if it's just the people around us or our family, but I've noticed that the kids that have been exposed to dual languages, bilingual houses, take forever to speak. Like, I've noticed that they don't start talking at a normal age, you know, like our daughters are one, two, or the boys, you know, two, they start saying words, you know, they're talking. I think by two, they're already like, you know, a pretty decent conversation with them. Yes. 3, of course, 4, forget about it. Our baby, you know, she's gonna be 5, and she talks a lot, and she
says some really big words for her age.
And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I see other kids are 5 already,
her same age,
and are bilingual, and they can't even speak one or the other. It's a lot of grunts, it's a lot of pointing, it's a lot of facial expressions, or it's a lot of tantrums or whispering on the parents' ears because they don't want people to hear them. Because they might say, you know,
I feel like our teenager that they said it wrong.
Maybe they're embarrassed too. That's the one thing I've noticed with the people that are bilingual.
And I grew up around a bunch of Latin people in my community, and none of their kids spoke Spanish. I mean, if they did, they spoke it very broken, right? But you didn't. You were surrounded by people who spoke Spanish all the time because you were you were in a border town. You were San Diego. You were in San Diego. I remember
I did get made fun of my English because I was like, oh, how did you learn? Or why is it so good? Or why this? Why that? I was like, I don't know. Maybe the cartoons. I don't know. You know, all my cartoons were in English. Mm-hmm. My dad did talk to me in English every once in a while. But yeah, everybody else around me spoke Spanish.
I also think just some people they don't have an ear for it. You know, like, there's just some people that, like I'm saying, our 10-year-old, for as much exposure as he had at a young age, he should be able to pick it up really quickly. And he is not.
He's not interested.
He's just not. It's not in him.
Because, I mean, but at the same time, I mean, the kids are pretty much bilingual as it is because they all learned ASL. As babies, but they also don't speak that now. I mean, I still speak. Well, we haven't had the practice. I mean, I took it in college, and I can't remember half the crap I took either because it hasn't been practiced.
I know more than you.
Yeah, and it's especially frustrating when I'm using sign language, and I keep on getting corrected. I was like, wait, hold on, no, I was like, I went to college. Yeah. This is what I was taught.
Yeah,
and then they were telling me that you changed it, so it was like every 2 years. They keep on changing.
What was the observation our teenagers said was that it's lazy. It's lazy sign language now.
Lazy. But I mean, I always understand that there was like an accent.
Oh yeah, different region, just like regions. Speaking.
Yeah, so it changes, but yeah. So for me, that gets even more frustrating, and it just turns me off. Like instead of taking the time correcting, but when you start laughing, it's kind of like
well. I mean, that never stopped me from trying to speak Spanish.
Yeah, but I see the face you make when they make fun of you.
Of course it bothers me, but I'm not going to stop trying. Like, even with the ASL, when the 21-year-old, you know, laughs at something I said or corrects me at something I said, I'm grateful that she's correcting me because we've been told, and you learned this in college, that it's constantly changing.
I had a friend, a coworker friend that passed away, and he had this awesome thing he used to say all the time whenever he made a mistake and people would try to be smart asses with him. He would always say, I might be saying the wrong word. After all, English is my second language. Don't belittle me, educate me.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I was like, I thought that was like good. I was like, oh, that's deep, man. Like, instead of people putting you down or being smart asses about it, like, why not take the time to try to
educate me? Teach me how to do it right.
I mean, you're putting energy on both things anyhow, right?
Yeah.
Like, I one of my favorite things that I always use, and I got it from a movie, and I tell people, is like, I want you to explain this to me like if I'm a 5-year-old on everything. Yeah. You know, even in a language, like, why does it work like that? I have that when people ask me about Spanish. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, you really want to learn? Okay, I'll explain a couple of things, like whatever the question might be, you know, masculine or feminine or.
Yeah. But ultimately for our kids, we do expect them to learn the language at some point, but I mean, they can learn it in high school. I'm not.
Well, see, for me, I mean, I was kind of more like, yes, they need to learn it because if they're going to have a conversation with their grandfather or grandmother or whatever, you know, they need to know Spanish. This is from my side.
Yes.
But then my stepmom passed away, so then I'm like, well, I guess I don't need to speak Spanish to her. And then the relationship between my dad and me, like, we went our separate ways. So then they don't see him. So then I'm like, well.
But your dad speaks English.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I'm kind of like, well, then I guess they really don't need to learn Spanish because everybody else speaks English, so they can get the point across.
And I guess that's part of it too, because I've been asked this as well. It's like, oh, you know, why aren't you teaching your kids Spanish? I'm like, in all honesty, we do speak to them in Spanish. We tell them things in Spanish, but I learned from my grandmothers. Because my grandmothers didn't speak. One of them spoke English and Spanish. It was broken English, but she spoke it. And my other grandma didn't speak English at all. So I had to learn Spanish to communicate with them. And I spent a lot of time with those grandmothers. I was with them every summer, like one or the other. So I had to learn to survive, basically, you know, in situations that I was with them. Versus my brothers don't speak Spanish very well. The one after me speaks it better now, but they didn't have that.
So right now that you're saying that, I'm just thinking about this other story. A few years ago, my wife's grandfather had a birthday party, a big old birthday party in Peru, and the family went, except for us. I think you were pregnant at the time.
Yeah, I was pregnant.
I think you were pregnant, and we had 2 little boys. I think it was with our daughter. So the family went to Peru. Oh, my in-laws went to Peru. And when they got back, you know, I heard some funny stories. But my favorite story I heard was, so the middle brother and the youngest brother, they decided to go out to a club with some cousins in Lima, I believe.
I think so, yeah, they were in Lima.
And so the middle brother-in-law doesn't, like, I don't think I've ever heard him speak Spanish. Like, ever. But I laughed because your youngest brother was like, he turned Mexican. He got drunk and they had the cab or an Uber or something. And he's like, he straight out turned Mexican. He was like, the stuff he was talking, the stuff he was saying, he was talking trash. The cab driver was looking at us, getting upset, and he's like, "Look, Mexicans!" Like, and they were like, "No, we're not Mexicans. Like, we're half Peruvian. Like, our mom's Peruvian. It's just that my brother over here was dating a Mexican, so he probably learned all this Mexican."
Well, his friends were Mexican when he was growing up, so all the slang he learned, you know, was from them.
Yeah, he's like, "No me chingues, güey."
Yeah.
But obviously, for a Mexican, the moment you say "no me chingues, güey," it's like, pinche pocho.
Yeah, you know, and that's definitely not something that's used in Peru. Like, you don't say that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you start saying that, you know. I'm not gonna go into it, but yeah. So to me, that was a hilarious story because I was like, man, I didn't know you had that much Spanish in you, bro. I was like, me neither. I gotta be drunk.
He has to be drunk, yeah. But I mean, again, see, my parents, my brothers understand, and they can speak. They can get by, but my parents didn't force them to learn it. Again, they also weren't in a situation where they had to, again, because they weren't spending time with the grandmas as much as I was. So
my funny thing is, our eldest, right? Her mom speaks Spanish all the time.
Yeah.
Her grandmother speaks Spanish all the time, right? And she spent a lot of time with them too. But I've never heard her speak Spanish. Like, it was and like, I talked to her in Spanish. We talk Spanish.
She understands everything we're saying.
Just recently, one of the last times she was over, I heard her speak Spanish, and I was like shocked. I was like, "Oh wait, I didn't know that." You know,
you had it in
Spanish.
you. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but and she said the same thing. It's like, it's not perfect. I hate speaking it because you can tell that I'm not pronouncing stuff right. I have an accent.
Yeah.
People make fun of me for it.
Yeah.
My cousins make fun of me. So she's in your shoes, and her mom's side of the family. They still make fun of her.
Yeah, but it's never. But that's the thing is, like, this whole them making fun of you thing. Like, even with our son, it never stopped me. Like, I didn't care if they made fun of me.
Just as though haters.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, hey, at least I speak 2 languages. You know what I mean? Like, you can make fun of me all you want, but at least I'm trying.
Well, that's the thing. But the one thing that I've always noticed and I always found funny ever since I was a kid was, so for us here, majority of the times they offer you, right? Well, I just learned actually now on another point of it. I used to think that just here in America for us, you know, most people were bilingual either because you're Hispanic and you're living in America, or you know you're an American, so you obviously know English and you know Spanish. Or vice versa. If, you know, we have a big Filipino community, right? So we got people from the Philippines, and so they know Tagalog and they know English, right? Part of the reason why I took Tagalog in high school, because it was like 50-50. You know, it was like, I'll say like 35% in Hispanic, 35 Filipino, and all the others.
Okay.
And so I was like, I got kicked out of French. I needed to have a foreign language credits in order to graduate from high school. It was mandatory by the school district to have 1 year of foreign language. So I was like, well, I'll take Tagalog. That way I know if they're ever talking crap about me, I know what they're saying.
Yeah.
Which was beautiful for me because it's one of those things that you really learn to love and appreciate another culture the moment that you start learning their language. And they look at you different the moment that they know that you're trying to know their language, right? Even
well,
if
at
it's
least
just
here.
to read them. Yeah. So the moment, and I was the only non-Filipino
In the class. Yeah.
right? I think there was another girl, and they welcomed us, and they schooled us, and the teacher, my Beanie Peralta, I was what we used to call her, would keep me at the class and teach me more words and work with me, which was funny because like I always make the joke now after learning it. I was like, oh, we're cousins, Filipinos and Mexicans, we're cousins. You know, we're both Spanish colonies, and that's why we have the same last names and everything, and the same culture. And Vicks is the remedy for everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of things are very similar. But sometimes it's funny because there's also that I feel the competition. But so where I'm at, I have a lot of Mexicans, Filipinos, and Vietnamese. And Vietnamese, and it's they're a lot of bilingual. So that's my accent. And then I lived in the East Coast, and then I realized that a lot of people don't. And I was like, interesting. But every time you see any British actor, anytime you learn about anybody that studied overseas, they have a minimum of 3 languages in their vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because everything is so close, but everyone knows that French knows Spanish, and they know like
they
German,
might know Italian or English or German. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. The Italians, it's just crazy how much they know. And I wish I would know, like, is it something that they do in school?
I think so. I think they're taught at a very young age. But that's the other part of it. So, like, educationally, they're not teaching Spanish in elementary school, right? You don't really, and sometimes not even in junior high, you don't really get that option until high school unless you go to some private school, right? And, like, our son, he has the option to take Spanish, French, and I think one other language. So I told him, why don't you just take Spanish, because you need to learn the Spanish so you have that behind your belt. But he's like, oh no, I'm going to take something else. I go, no, I really want you to take the Spanish because we're not, I want you to learn how to read and write it. Like, it's other than just hearing us.
You're talking about the oldest one, right?
This is the eldest. So but I think the younger grades are also going to be.
So it's funny because we always make that joke about our second boy, and he made that joke, right, where he's like, yeah, I need to learn a little bit because how else am I going to talk to my workers?
I know.
And I thought it was funny. I was like, yeah, well, like, what if I tell him, like, no, I need the grass to be cut a little shorter,
Well, and that's a good example because, like, one of my brothers, the youngest one, his Spanish is not super awesome. Like, it's not super strong.
I don't think I've ever heard him speak Spanish.
Well, the times I have heard him speak Spanish, it's not the best, but he knows just enough to talk to his employees so that, like, things get done around the house, like the ladies who clean his house or the guy who does the landscaping. So I've heard him speak to them before, and it's just, oh, you do speak Spanish. Gosh, you really need more practice. But, that's me as a sister because I speak more than they do. But again, that same mentality, that our 10-year-old is starting to have, and maybe it's because they're both dragons, who knows, but this whole, like, I need to know at least Spanish so I can speak to my employees. So
the one thing about the oldest one that frustrated me was the deal was that I wasn't going to be forcing it because I was always kind of like working, and then he's home with you and your mom and everything. So I figured he might pick up some Spanish because you guys always speak Spanish.
We're always speaking Spanish, yeah.
So it's not like he doesn't hear it at home because he has. And you and me, like you said, when we're trying to talk and maybe try to, plan something or keep something hidden from them, we're speaking in Spanish and they're kind of like, he has talking about us, huh? I was like, yeah, so maybe you should learn. So, because that's how I learned English, because I remember my brother and his ex-wife would go into English whenever I was around, and I was like, oh, they're trying to, hide stuff from me. So I better learn this shit fast so that I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Me being nosy, like, I was like, I know that they're crap about something. But then this little punk goes to school and they're offering foreign language. And what language does he decide to take, though?
Latin.
He freaking takes Latin. Like, obviously, it's not a dead language, but it's considered a dead language if they're still teaching it in school.
Well,
I get it.
At this particular school, they actually start teaching Latin in the elementary level.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, Latin. Like,
the reason they teach
is
Latin,
he going to be an archaeologist?
The reason
is
they
he going
teach
to be
Latin,
a freaking priest?
If he wants to be, if he needs to be a lawyer or a doctor or go into any type of science type, everything's in Latin.
Because I'm pretty sure that Latin is going to be there.
Latin.
What? The title of the chapters or a freaking doctor
the terms are all in Latin.
It's so great. I think that would be better, like as an elective, maybe like in college, but.
Well, again, I've asked him to take Spanish, but he did take Latin, and I was actually taking it on Duolingo too, so I could talk to him and practice with him at home. But yeah, I've asked him to take Spanish so he can get that.
I wish I could learn other languages, but I can't even get one right, so why am I just going to ruin all of them?
One of my brothers went to backpacking in Europe. My middle brother, he went backpacking in Europe, and he told me that France is the worst country to speak English in. He said that every time he spoke English, he would get horrible service or ignored. But if he spoke Spanish, they were cool with him. So whatever little bit of Spanish he had under his belt, he had to use when he was in
the
France.
French have reasons to be upset with us.
Yeah, no, I understand. But he said, but he did also notice that it was male versus female, because he said that he'd see some female tourists who would speak in English and they would get decent service.
There it is.
But him as a man, him as a man speaking in English, that he's like, don't speak English when you go to France. He goes, only use Spanish.
He's here for our women.
He was literally there to do some genealogy work for me, right? Because I had asked him to go do some genealogy work for us.
Family tree stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So, but he told me that was the worst country. He backpacked through that region, and he said, yeah, the worst place was France.
I do remember him saying also, don't wear jeans.
Oh yeah, you have to wear slacks. Mm-hmm.
He said automatically they know you're an American.
Yeah, if you're in jeans.
Yeah, if you're in jeans, to them that's lazy.
Our son's school told us the same thing. Remember they were talking about going to Austria? Mm-hmm. And the teachers told us the same thing. They told the whole group, said, for all of you that love to wear your jeans, just know you're going to stick out like a sore thumb if you wear jeans in Europe. That's when our son was just like, Mom, I got to go get slacks. Because he's still planning to go to Europe at some point in the next couple of years. But language, I mean, it's true though. Like, even though you say that English is a universal language because it's spoken everywhere, it doesn't mean people want to hear you speak it. Do you know what I mean? When you go to their country, they expect you to speak their language, or at least try.
We'll try. Yeah, no,
but then why are we supposed to be okay with everybody not learning the language here?
Well, because we become kind of conformist, and we have to cater to everybody else because
we're the mixing pot.
We're fascist. We're racist. We're whatever.
We're all that if we don't do it right. We're the mixing pot. So yeah, we're all gonna walk around with our mason jars and our dip in our mouths and be like, "They speak English now, you hear?" I mean, but that's how they
expect. That's how.
That's how they treat us. In their countries.
Well, when I say that to my Mexican side of the family, they look at me like I'm a sellout.
Yeah, but I'm just saying in general, like, people get mad when they come here and they don't want to learn the language. And even within my own family, right? My grandma that never learned the language, she just, because it was too hard for her, she just decided she wasn't going to learn it. You know,
instead of all my stuff out.
It's just kind of like, you're here in America where the language is English. Instead of making us write things in your language so you understand, why can't you just learn the language? Because if I go to your country, I better damn know at least the basics to get by so that I don't get ripped off. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's ridiculous to me when people are like, oh, I don't have to learn the language. They're going to accommodate to me. Yeah, you're right. The Americans are going to accommodate. The American government will accommodate to you. But I think it's stupid. I think it's a bunch of...
Yeah, it's one of those 50-50, right? It's the same thing for us as Americans, and you go somewhere else, not like as a tourist. Everybody there will know your language and help you out. Right?
Nowadays, but there was a time when if you didn't know the language, you're out of luck unless you found somebody nice to help you.
Well, if I always feel like, and I always say this, is like, if I don't feel comfortable going somewhere and I don't know the language and I don't want to take the time to learn it, and then if they're going to treat me like crap, then why would I give them my hard-earned money?
Yeah, why am I going to? Yeah,
when there's so many beautiful places here that I can go see.
Yeah.
So I'll just rather leave it here.
Yeah.
And probably still get the same customer service I will somewhere else.
Right.
Because, I have a tan or, I have black hair.
For other reasons. Not the language barrier, but other reasons. So, but I mean, the whole idea was that this came up because this weekend I was made fun of, for my mispronunciation of words. And he even asked, am I saying it right?
And it wasn't just that. It was the fact that they said, it was like,
why don't you?
That we're wrong as parents, that we failed as parents for not teaching our children Spanish.
Yeah.
That's the thing that made me think about it. I was like, wow, like that's pretty freaking harsh. I was like, automatically calling us out like that, saying that, we're wrong and we're failures because they don't know Spanish.
Yeah, yet you're living here and you still don't know the language.
Well, that's the thing, right? My kids have passports, but when's the last time they went out of, to south of the border?
Yeah, they've never.
Our girls, 7 years, 8 years.
Our youngest has never been, and it's been 6 years. Our youngest, our older girl was 6 months old the last time she was south of the border. She just turned 7,
so yeah. Now last time, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So then, and when's the last time they went to Peru?
Never.
They've never been to Peru. Right?
I've never been to Peru.
Yeah.
So.
When's the last time they went to France?
Never.
Yeah. When's the last time we went to Italy?
Never. Right? We've never been anywhere else. So it's, and we don't mean to sound ignorant. Again, we love language. We love language.
Oh no, we're talking about Duolingo. I take Italian.
Yeah. We love languages. We love learning languages. Are we actually learning them? No, because we don't have anybody to talk to. And ultimately, it's what it takes.
I love Italian because I did hear it a few times as a kid. Mm-hmm. So that part of me wanted to learn it, obviously. But it's so similar to Spanish. Like so many things
well, the same thing. I feel the same thing about French and even Latin. Our son, I think Latin is helping our son learn Spanish.
As I've gotten older, I appreciate French more. When I was younger, I didn't care for it. I thought it was hard, especially like those,
the nasally portion of it. Mm-hmm.
But as I've heard it and everything, I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool.
Ultimately, though, if you're not going to use it, you forget it.
Well, I mean, I hate it when you use it because every time you use it, we end up with a baby.
Shut up, Gomez. Well, okay, another example is American Sign Language, right? Mm-hmm. So you were saying you took it in college. And we haven't seen the 21-year-old in about a year. Right? Yeah. So she's here. She's been here for, almost a month now?
Yeah. I don't know who won that bid.
I think someone must have
I'm about to lose.
I'm thinking somebody who listens to us must have said something to her about not being here for certain birthdays. But because she told me that, she's like, well, I've never been here for your birthday and I've never been here for my brother's birthday, so I'm going to be here this year. I'm like, someone told you something. Someone made you feel bad about this. But ultimately, the thing is that she speaks sign language. Right, she's speaking in sign language and
ASL.
I'm sorry, in ASL, American Sign Language, and we're not fluent by any means, but I get by pretty well with her. I remember a lot of things, and if I don't remember, I look it up or I ask her. So I don't remember how to say that, or if she's signing, I ask her to slow down. And then her first questions the first couple of weeks was, "Why don't you know this?" I'm like, "'Cause we don't see you. you're not here. We don't practice with you. Well, why don't my siblings know ASL? I'm like, do your siblings with your mom know ASL, the ones that live with you? Well, no. Well, if they live with you and they don't know ASL, how do you expect the ones who don't see you to know ASL?
When she was a little girl, you and me, went out of our way to make sure that we learned ASL. Yeah. And then whenever she would come over, which was every other weekend, right?
Yeah.
We would tell her, you don't have to wear hearing aids.
Yeah,
she
doesn't.
Use your words.
She doesn't.
We can sign. Well, we'll sign. Give you a break, whatever. And it used to mean a lot to her, right? And we had all those kid books and everything.
Yeah, and we still have all those ASL books.
And we had your friends, that were always interested. And I remember, like, their little girl, like...
You had a coworker who knew ASL.
Yeah, and, I mean, even your brother's ex-girlfriend knew ASL. So she was around all of us that we were trying to talk to her in her language so she felt accepted. And she taught us, because of her. I mean, I think we all got used to having like closed caption on everything we watched.
Yeah.
Especially when I watch anything that's like English or British, I need to have closed caption in there because
you can't understand the accents.
Yeah, no, and it's, I mean, it makes sense because I'm just like, what they say?
I need closed captions with Snatch.
Yeah. Oh, like Guy Ritchie movies, definitely.
You can't understand.
So, yeah, because the different dialects, different country,
dialects,
right? So, yeah, it's different. So we got used to it, and like you said, she's been barely coming over, maybe once a year. It's usually quick pit stops.
Yeah.
It's not like a long time.
Yeah.
So then she just probably remembers that, oh, well, everybody should know over there.
Yeah, but...
And now she's like, oh.
Yeah, she's been here, almost a month.
And she gave me a hard time, too. I was like, well, how come you forgot? I was like, I don't practice. You're not here.
Yeah.
Like, we can't practice.
Yeah, I sign to our eldest because he's the one who learned the most.
Right.
So I sign to him, like when he used to do sports. I would sign to him on the sidelines because... that way I didn't have to yell at him. He'd understand what I was trying to tell him.
I remember when we played the Riverside School for the Deaf.
Oh, yes. Yes, when he was playing lacrosse.
Kids were good.
They're so good. And we wanted her to go to that school.
And after the game, right before the end of the game, I told the kids, how to sign some things to the other team, And those kids were so happy. And then I ended up having a quick conversation with the coach, and I was like, oh, man, you're a little too fast. You need to slow down. Which is what happens with me too sometimes with you. You start saying to me and I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, again.
And I do that with the 21-year-old. I'll tell I'm sorry, you need to slow down, guy. Yeah. I'm not used to seeing it.
Yeah, because I'm really like rusty, especially when it comes to spelling. And then now you've learned like some of the new sign language from her and you're doing it. And I was like, what the hell was that? So yeah, maybe I should take it.
But that's part of it, right? That's part of it is that if you're not using it, whatever language it is, right, on a daily basis, or not even daily, but just on a regular basis, you're not going to remember the language. Like, there's even people who come from Mexico or from another country that speaks Spanish. They come here, and if all they start using is English, they forget the Spanish. Like, even you sometimes forget Spanish, right? You've run into times where you're like, oh, gosh, I don't remember how to say that. And I think that's just normal. I will admit, though, that the more languages you know, sometimes the words get jumbled in your head. Oh, yeah. Because, like, I'll be thinking something and I'll know what the word is in French, but I can't think what it is in English or Spanish to save my life. I'm like, I can't remember what that is. Or I'll know what it is in sign language. Or,
Yeah, and grammatically, like, I saw speaking sometimes because of the way people say Spanish is backwards to English, right? But if you're a Spanish speaker, you always say, no, English is backwards. And then ASL is the same thing. You speak in the same pattern that you do in Spanish. So sometimes as you're doing ASL, you're speaking Spanish, and then I'm trying to speak English when I'm at work, I end up messing up myself. And then people are like, well, what's up? Or, I end up getting like an accent or messing up my words. And I'm like, I'm sorry, man. I've been speaking a lot of Spanish, and I've been signing. Getting myself confused.
And you probably use your hands a lot at work, right? When you're talking.
I'm guilty. There are moments when people are far away from me, and I end up signing, and they're looking at me like, "What?" And I'm like, Why don't you understand what I'm saying? But wait, just wait.
Just,
Give me 10
I do
minutes.
the same thing.
You know, like,
I'll just all of a sudden start signing to people. I'm speaking and signing at the same time, and they're like, "Why the hell are you signing at me?"
I'm gonna take a 5-minute break, and then I'm gonna go eat something. I'll be back. I'm gonna go to the restroom. Anyway, but this guy's here, and I'm like signing, and they're like, "What just happened?"
Honestly, I think everybody should learn sign language just so you don't have to yell at people from across the room. But
everybody will always use the universal sign language to scream across anywhere.
I know, but it's anyways, this is talk about that. We just
so then in a way we are trilingual. Well, for you is more. You got the four, so you have French, you have ASL, you have English, and you have Spanish.
Yeah,
right. And then now you're like learning.
I'm learning German
and a little bit of Latin.
Oh yeah.
So
I think I know more German than Latin though.
Yeah. So you have that.
But I've noticed like I can't think of, because I don't speak it, like the German, because I don't have anybody to speak German with. I'm not sure, on how to say things, but I can read it. Because on Duolingo, you have to read the thing. So if I read something, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that says. But I can't vocalize what.
The one thing I do love about knowing Spanish sometimes is when I get to help people.
Yeah. I agree.
And they get really, really happy that somebody took the time to stop and try to help them.
Yes.
Explain something or translate.
And someone that they can understand.
Yeah. That to me, when I see that, it makes me, I'm glad that I know Spanish.
So now that I'm back at work, I was the translator before I wasn't there. And I was the one who did, HR orientations in Spanish, and I'm the one who dealt with the guys in the vineyard. And I was told this last week that from the moment I stopped working in the office, the vineyard guys did not step foot in the office the whole time I was gone. And now they know I'm back. And their foreman walked into the office, and he saw me, and his eyes got all big, and he's like, "You're back." And I was like, "Yeah, temporarily. I'll be back." And then later that afternoon, I'm getting texts from the vineyard saying, "I hear you're back," but everything's in Spanish. They're like, "Oh, es que ya regresaste." And I was like, yeah, I'm here. I'll be here till, this time. And so now their person, that they felt comfortable speaking with and that understood their needs, from a company employee basis, is back in the office. So they were so happy. So definitely knowing that other language when it comes to workforce is super important. No, aside from the fact you get paid more.
Well, you should. I think when you're translating and helping out at work, they should be paying you as a whole different employee because you're.
Well, and that's like a lot of companies you go to. Like when I worked for the school district as a TA way back in the day, I got paid more than the other TAs just because I was bilingual.
Right. I was gonna say, I forgot what I was gonna say. It was something about the dual language.
Workforce and dual language?
It's I was just gonna say you were talking about that and people at work being happy to see you, and sometimes it makes it easier to explain things too if you know that somebody's like English is not the first language, right? Yeah. So there's an easier way to communicate. It makes you think outside the box. I know there's advantages of it. So my whole thing is how I would like to know how many of you guys have more than one language and are willing to teach it to your kids, or is it something that you decided to do, or is it something that you said, well, no, it comes to an end? Because I have noticed that in the Hispanic community, usually once you're a second generation, once you're technically a Chicano, I guess, that language dies at that time. It dies.
Yeah, it doesn't get like I said, a lot of my girlfriends growing up, even though they were Latinas, they didn't speak Spanish, or if they spoke Spanish, it was very, very broken.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, people, but as far as I understand it, so like when you're first generation, you're like, let's say you're Mexican, like me, you're Mexican, okay, you're Mexican, you were born in Mexico, and now you're in America, so you're Mexican. Then your children, it's the technically the first generation in America, so they're Mexican American. But then their children is already the second, so then technically by the word they become Chicanos at that time.
So that's it's the second generation. That's the
Chicanos. That's what I was saying. Yeah, second generation being born in the country where they are.
And that was my friends. Yeah, those were my friends.
And I noticed that in that Chicano culture, that's usually where that's it.
The language dies.
The language dies. Like it's only English. And I've noticed that I've known a couple of people that you look at them and they look very Hispanic. You know, they kept the same race going with parents. And so people talk to them in Spanish and they look at them like
I don't understand a word you're saying.
Yeah. So, and then they get a different treatment.
Yeah,
so.
I used to get offended when people assumed I spoke Spanish. When I was younger.
I get offended when people assume I don't speak Spanish.
Oh, no. When I was younger, I would get so mad when people assumed I spoke Spanish. But again, I'm coming from an area where it wasn't, a lot of people didn't speak Spanish. So
no, because I hate it when I go to teaching and they're calling me Güero and I'm like, come on, man, I got a 10. I'm not.
Yeah.
I got dark
hair. Once I moved to San Diego, there was no getting around it. Like, everybody would just automatically talk to me in Spanish, so I just had to get over it.
Well, for me, that's the one that makes me laugh. Whenever there's, like, a driver or a taco guy or something, and I talk to them in Spanish, they, like, kind of, like, do that look, and I'm like, what? And I just think about, like, my friend, how much crazy it must be for him, because he's got, like, those blue eyes and the white skin and everything, and he speaks Spanish. I'm sure people are freaking out because he doesn't look Hispanic at all.
It was like that time we were in Sinaloa, and...
Don't remind me. I hate that.
They thought I was. Angry. They thought I was from there, and he wasn't.
So angry. They're like, no, you're a gringo. You're a gringo.
It was because you have tattoos. Yeah, that's why. It's because
you have the long hair, you have the beard, and you have tattoos.
And you have tattoos.
Yeah. And I was like, oh no, but I'm from here.
That was in Culiacan, right?
Right. Yeah. I was like, no, she's from here. You're not.
I'm like, nope.
No, the other way around.
The other way around. But I mean, I don't know. I love language, but it's just definitely,
like I said,
I just get frustrated by people who, and I had this conversation. You and I have talked about this, where my cousin would always introduce me to guys who only spoke Spanish, and that was my issue with you when I first met you. Was that I thought, here's another one, that she's introducing me to that only speaks Spanish. And it turned out you spoke English. And then I was great. I was like, oh, perfect. He speaks English.
It wasn't my looks or my charm or my attitude. It was the fact that I spoke English.
Yes, right? It was so important to me. It was super important to me because I speak 2 languages. So even back then when I was 15 years old, I was like, I'm 15 years old and I speak 2 languages. I'm not going to get myself involved or want to be around these people who think that, who are going to put me down for speaking English, because that's literally how I felt. Like, they're always like, oh, you're Spanish, like putting me down on the way I spoke Spanish and things like that. So I was like, I don't want that. I want somebody. They weren't
thinking about a green card at the time.
They were definitely not thinking about green cards. But they were thinking, I wanted somebody that I could talk to in English and Spanish, and
you ended up getting somebody that just curses you out in both languages, though.
I guess, yeah, that's what I got now. I get cursed out in both languages now.
No, she doesn't.
Sometimes. Yeah. But I mean, in the end, I do want the kids to learn. I'm okay with them learning it in school. But luckily they're in a school that offers it. Yeah.
I try to convince them, man. I tell them about their cousins. I tell them about, maybe one day you'll meet people. And then, the boys are getting older. I was just, hey, man, you might get some honeys out there that, that speak Spanish. You might want to.
No, because our eldest has told me he's going to marry a Scandinavian girl, and that's why he has to learn Scandinavian.
Oh, sure.
That's what he's told me.
Well, that he doesn't need to. He's just going to mail order it. And
he's learning Swedish because he wants a Swedish bride. That's what he wants.
He better be tall.
That's what he's got his mind. He's already told me what he wants. He wants a Swedish bride, and that's why he's learning Swedish. But I was gonna say that. So like these days, there's all these like immersion schools, right? Where dual language immersion schools. So like our nephews right? They came from Mexico. Your brother, he speaks English and Spanish. My cousin, even though she's from here, she doesn't speak English. And their kids, and they ended up putting their kids in a dual language school, and they now speak English really well. But it took them a few years to get it because they only spoke Spanish. So now, their eldest is 12, and now he speaks really well.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's cool for schools that kind of offer that to help the kids transition, but I guess that's what else ESL was supposed to be. But that's just another thing that we're catering.
Well, I like I mean, because like we were looking at it. There's one here near where we live, and we've discussed, putting the baby in that school, because it's just like down the street from us. And it has a good reputation. And that way she would learn Spanish that much sooner, because she'll be immersed in it. But, and then we know someone whose granddaughter goes to that school. And they're an English-speaking family. Like, she speaks English, she speaks Spanish, like the grandma speaks Spanish. But everyone else, all her kids only speak English. And so now this granddaughter is in that dual immersion, that dual language school.
But look at what happened.
To learn Spanish.
So yeah, we're talking about that, and it's funny because we even tried to do an episode in Spanish, right?
Oh yeah.
So that because we knew there was people that was listening, and we were wanting to involve them, right? Mm-hmm. So we did an episode in Spanish, so they know what was up, what we were doing, what the plan was, right?
Yeah.
So I guess in a way we also catered. So, I mean, it's just...
I guess so.
We're just trying to be inclusive in that way.
Yeah, that's what we said. We're trying to be... Because we know people that are listening that don't speak English.
Yeah, I mean, language is beautiful.
You're saying it didn't work. It didn't matter. Because
I am saying language is beautiful. Of course, everybody has their thing, and there's nothing wrong learning it for whatever reason. Might be a job, might be a trip, a family trip, might be significant other to make it easier, heritage.
Yeah, I want to make another point. I have a cousin. She grew up here. She speaks English and Spanish, Peruvian. She's on my mom's side. And she's raising both her daughters with only Spanish. And I asked her, yes, so like you're doing that? I told her, you're raising them like that way. And she says, well, they'll learn in school.
Yeah, I remember one of the doctors said that to me. Like, just speak Spanish 100%. Just do it nonstop. And they'll learn English in school. Mm-hmm. But then in my mind, I was like, well, wouldn't that slow them down? Wouldn't they have a hard time adjusting?
They say it doesn't. But for me, again, our son was put in ESL classes when he didn't even speak Spanish. So it was kind of, I felt like, what was the point? It was super confusing for me. I was like, because I marked that we spoke Spanish at home.
English is already complicated and harder. We talked about this before.
That was during that core curriculum change. It was such a mess.
I just feel that sometimes, I don't know if knowing another language at that young age, it makes it more confusing because grammatically, you're already going to have a hard time learning English.
They say it's not. They say you're supposed to. But then
that's the thing. That's what they say. Kids are sponges.
Yeah.
And they absorb everything. And so it's easier. It's easier to learn at a young age than it is at an older age.
Yeah.
Which I totally, completely agree because, let's say, for example, people that learn English as kids and they're great now. Mm-hmm. But there's people that learn English as grown-ups.
They'll always have an accent.
And they'll always have an accent, right?
Yeah. Like my mom.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to go. Your mom came over for college, and
yeah, my mom's been here since she was in her 20s. Yeah,
and she still has an accent.
Yeah,
but I was gonna say, does Rita Moreno still have an accent, or is she just fake?
She fakes that. She fakes the accent.
Yeah, she does, right?
Yeah, she doesn't have an accent.
No, right. She does it really good.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, a lot of people choose... there are people who choose, like my cousin, to raise their kids with just Spanish. And then they're like, they'll just learn English in school. But I sometimes question, like, how difficult is that going to be unless they find a dual language school to put them in.
Yeah. And then I heard a thing they were talking about, how China and Russia are kind of, being a certain way right now. And they're enjoying how us as Americans were kind of self-imploding. So I was like, should we be learning Russian or Chinese instead?
Okay, so again, our eldest is also learning Russian. So he's learning, he's trying to learn a lot of languages. He's trying to learn Russian, Scandinavian, or Swedish, German.
No. Okay,
he's trying to learn all this stuff.
But what about the people that learn Elvish?
Oh, I mean,
is that considered a language also?
It is considered a language. I think there's a dictionary for it. It is considered a language.
Right. I mean, what else?
And Klingon.
Klingon?
Yeah.
Oh, there are people that...
Yes, there's people who speak Klingon.
Dothraki.
Yeah, exactly. They're considered languages. Crazy, right? Made up languages.
Damn.
I guess that's what language ultimately is, right?
Yeah.
Just made up sounds put together to describe something.
That's just great.
Well, look, I guess your point of all this was just to ask people, who out there speaks more than one language, and do you think
benefits that they've seen on children
in your life and in your children
dual language and people that are not? I just read quickly, like I said, those quick statistics, and that a lot of people are pro for it because it opens up the kids' minds and makes them smarter, makes them think outside of the box.
They say learning music is considered learning a language. Learning to read music, the notes, it's considered another language. So, like, even kids who learn musical instruments and can read music, it's the equivalent of learning another language.
Okay, well. Yeah, so I guess bottom line, let us know what you guys think about being dual, triple, quadruple,
however many languages. And do you have an interest in learning language, or do you agree that, like, we're in America, just speak English?
Yeah. Are you planning on teaching your kids one language first and then the other one, or is it stick to English and then they can learn whatever
stick to
other
Spanish
language.
And learn English?
No, like learn English and then maybe learn Spanish once they get to school, have the school system teach them. Or, it's up to you to teach them the Spanish and then the school will teach them the English. Like, tell us what you're thinking, how to do it. I mean, we're late already, so I guess for us it's kind of like we went with the English and they're going to learn Spanish in
But we
school.
still have little ones, like, we still have a 7-year-old and a soon-to-be 5-year-old. Oh, yeah. We had our 6-year-old is now 7, everybody. She's now 7. So we had a birthday and she had a great time. But we still have them. They're still small enough and young enough that they can still absorb this stuff. I mean, they do say that the prime age is like before 6, I think, where that exposure really needs to be there. And again, I had my grandmother's. My mom speaks English. So it's not like... Even though we've told her many times, Mom, please speak to the kids in Spanish. Please speak to the kids in Spanish. She forgets, and it's just easier for her to speak to them in English.
Yeah, I know a while back I made the jokes about, like, no, I don't want you guys to teach them Spanish because they'll be that Peruvian Spanish.
I know, you're horrible.
But now I'm like, I don't care as long as it starts, they know some Spanish.
I even read to them in Spanish. Sometimes I have some old Spanish fairy tales. And, like, what did you tell them one time I was reading? Like, you're surprised to hear me read in Spanish because I was doing a good job. And so the kids don't understand it, but they were happy to hear it. Like,
I've been doing this thing with the kids where they watch movies and they watch movies a lot over and over and over again. And once I hear them start quoting it in English, I'm like, all right, cool, stop. And I'll go and I'll change it to Spanish. And I'm like, you already know what they're saying in English. You're quoting it. So just remember that as you're hearing it in Spanish.
Yeah.
And I was like, and we're going to keep on doing it that way until you learn it. I remember the few months I was in French class, the teacher made us watch a lot of French cartoons.
Okay.
A lot of them. And of course, Beauty and the Beast was the main one. But yeah, so I was like, all right. Another thing, I think that's good to learning the language, to accept it, to makes you want to enjoy it and translate it and whatever. I think music. You're talking about reading notes, but I think listening to whatever foreign language.
Other language, and we listen to all languages, right? And music.
You know, of course, and like you end up the proper pronunciation. You know what? You read the lyrics, you sing with them, because that's how most people learn lyrics and songs right away, right?
Yeah.
They keep repetitive listening.
Even learning English, like my aunt said that she learned English by reading novels, the old back in the day sexy novels.
Sesame Street, yo. Sesame Street for me. And He-Man and Mask, G.I. Joe, Thundercats. Can I blame TMT? Nah.
I didn't even learn about Topo Gigio till I was already an adult. So
yeah, I know both Topo Gigios, Italian and Spanish.
I'm pretty sure. I know I was exposed to Spanish TV when I was little because whenever we'd go down to Mexico to TJ, but again, my grandmothers. If it wasn't for my grandmothers, I probably would not.
The one thing I'm going to say though, I remember when I had friends in school and they were asking me to help them with their Spanish lessons. It was proper Spanish, like Spain Spanish.
Yeah, Castilian.
Yeah, not this
Mexican.
So yeah. But I mean, we are the ones that's closest from what I've heard.
Oh my gosh, this argument again.
We are the most.
Just like the argument about lemons and limes. I'm like not going to go into it now.
Closest.
It doesn't matter.
Closest.
All Spanish on the American side is messed up. It's not Castilian. None of it is Castilian.
They have Spanish.
Especially not
Castilian.
in TJ.
Spanish don't use Castilian anymore either. That's the language.
Well, but I mean, if you're trying to go off the original language, nobody on the America side is no.
It's like Latin. I mean, we all come from Latin.
Yeah.
It's the same language.
So why do you have a problem with our son learning Latin, though?
Because nobody uses Latin anymore.
I'm telling you they do. Just depends on the profession you go into. Ultimately, though, our point, as much as we don't like that people are like demanding for everything to be in their language when they're here, we still agree that it's important to know more than one language for your job. Right? Like,
well, yeah,
if you plan to travel,
three.
If you're going to be traveling, if you plan to travel for work, you get paid more the more languages you know. I mean, there's definitely benefits to it. If you're going to be like a humanitarian of some sort, you definitely need to know the language of the countries you're going to be doing humanitarian work for. So it's definitely important to learn more than one language. And I just get frustrated with the people who come here and are like, I don't have to learn English because you guys are just going to accommodate to me.
Go back to your country.
Yeah.
I was just trying to teach. I just thought about Dave Chappelle.
All right, people.
Well, yeah, let us know what you think. And
have a good night.
Have a good one. And if you hear a lot of weird little popping noises, I can't stop popping my knuckles today. So
yeah, and I kept slapping myself, and we're still in these squeaky chairs. So
yeah.
But you guys have a great night. Sorry if this is kind of weird. It's kind of, again, we're totally off our groove because we missed an episode last week due to this whole schedule change. But I'll try to get back into it. So thanks for listening.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Peace.